that's for Mbimbam. Do you know Mbimbam?
No.
My brother, and me.
Okay. No, definitely not.
They are, yeah, okay. So they are three brothers who podcast together, and they do like 1,000 different podcasts. They're ridiculous and super funny. Um, and there's an appreciation group for them on Facebook that I'm part of. And I think there's a group within that group of podcasters that like my brother, and me. And I'm in that group because I used to have a podcast called Cannon Fire, which was a literary review podcast with my friends. That one kind of fell to the wayside because life kind of took over and we stopped doing it. But I was still in that group, and at one point Aiden put up that application that I mentioned. And I was just like, you know what? It's been a little while since I did a podcast. I'm really feeling that I am ready to jump back into this world, and I'm going to apply and see what happens. And like 20 minutes later, Aiden messaged me and was like, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Because I will add you to the Discord and we will go ahead and go with it. So I was one of the first people that was a part of it. And it's just expanded and become super, super great from there.
Fascinating. And so about your podcast that's coming, how does it feel to be creating all of these things and being a part of these shows and creating your own podcast and having to deal with ADHD?
Oh my gosh. It's overwhelming for sure. I find myself overwhelmed a lot. I find myself having to go back to a lot of coping mechanisms that don't necessarily always work even. And it's better whenever I remind myself that pretty much everybody else on the network also deals with some form of either mental illness or learning disability, or specifically there's a lot of us with ADHD, like a lot of us with ADHD. And so going to them and asking for help is always an option. And so having people that can help me and who understand what I'm going through is honestly the best. It's the most I could ever ask for.
So it's just a really, really rich community, basically.
Super, super supportive. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. This sounds really enjoyable.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
What other struggles and wins do you have when it comes to being creative, at least in any space that you find yourself creating?
A lot of the time, there's a lot of motivation issue, I think. And that comes from the ADHD, but it also comes from not being taken seriously as a creator sometimes, which I have found not to be an issue at all within the Sinister Parent Company. They value my input because I am non-binary, because I am assigned female at birth, because I am a person of color. They value that input because a lot of them aren't that. And so they value having accessibility to someone who has that side of things as something that I can input. But for a long time, I think I wasn't taken seriously because of a lot of that stuff. And I found a lot of people saying, well, whenever I was younger, I did have one person tell me that my drawings would look good on a cave wall. And I was like, that's not even what my tribe did. Right. So that was a little racist. He wasn't wrong. They would have looked fantastic on a cave wall, but it wasn't okay to say.
Right. And so how is it, I'm trying to formulate the question, but how do all of who you are affect what you create? Do you ever hold yourself back? Have you had to feel like you had to do a certain thing instead of being your full self?
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I've felt that for certain. I think I've felt that, but I don't think I've ever done that. I have always been very, like, to the point that people will say something about it, been very bold and very brash and not cared what other people thought, like, pretty much ever. And of course, deep down, I did care, but it was not enough to the point that it ever changed what I was going to do. So a lot of people have asked me, well, how did you get to the point where you just don't care? And honestly, I never did get to that point. I've just always been like that. I don't know how to help you not care.
Right.
I've just always been like that. But like, so I have had those thoughts because I do care somewhat. I do care what people think of me to the point that I don't want them to think horribly of me.
Right.
But it's never affected. If I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And if especially if I want to do something and it's not going to hurt anybody else, I'm going to do it. You know, so I don't think I've ever really had that kind of issue. I'm more worried about what my community, on my mother's side, which is the Native American side of my family. I'm more worried about what the Cherokee community will think of me than I am about my father's side, which is white people. I don't care what white people think.
I mean, mood. But how come more the Cherokee or Native side?
You know, I'm not really sure. I feel like it's just because we're a lot more steeped in tradition on that side. And that side specifically close to me, that side of my actual family and not just the community itself, has been known to be rather judgmental sometimes.
Yeah.
So I've struggled with them for sure. That my close immediate family I've struggled with. And it's getting better, I think. It's not getting better in terms of them being judgmental, but it's getting better in terms of them not saying anything about it.
Right.
Which is nice. Yeah.
It's really interesting because I don't think I've really met anyone with a Native background.
Really?
Yeah. It's like you get to hear, oh yeah, I am part this, but it's not where they're so connected with who they are or their family or, you know, their background and all of the parts of that culture.
Yeah, we have, my grandparents did not grow up on a reservation, but their parents did. Okay. And their parents moved them off for literally, quote, better opportunities. Specifically because they saw that their kids could pass as white. And my grandfather, he can now, but back then when he was going to school, he did have slurs yelled at him for sure, but not to the point where people didn't think he was white most of the time if they just passed him on the street. So they were not raised on reservations, but we do have recordings of my great-grandparents taking part in some Cherokee tradition, and it's really cool to listen to and to be a part of, because we did learn quite a bit of Cherokee tradition, but also since my grandparents were raised off the reservation, they weren't as connected to the community as I think I am. And that's because I sought connection with that community, because I wanted to go back to it. Whereas they have a negative connection to it because of their past. I sought to kind of reignite that connection because I wanted to know about my history. I wanted to know about my family.
Right. And that's beautiful. I think the ability to be able to do so is a gift.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Because I know that even in my culture, we do have things that are typical and indigenous to us, and not everyone has that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as I think about like the holidays and, you know, being part Puerto Rican, we have foods that we make, pasteles and different things. And it's just to have even a piece of that culture, I find is a gift.
Yes, definitely.
And how did your parents feel about you going to reconnect and reignite that?
They're super supportive. They didn't like that I ended up moving back to North Carolina for it because they live in Texas. My grandfather was part of the Oklahoma band. But our tribe is originally from North Carolina. So I wanted to learn more about it in North Carolina. And I had the great opportunity to do that because my best friend lives there. And so I just moved in with her. And they weren't super excited about me moving so far away, but I figured it was a good opportunity for me. And they did appreciate that it was something that I really wanted to do. And, you know, I'm an adult, so I can do what I want. And they never pushed too hard on me not going. They were just more worried about me having, you know, the money to go and all that kind of stuff. I think my mom was actually a little bit jealous, because she came and visited me this summer, and I took her to the museum and I took her to the reservation, in North Carolina. And she was just so excited to see her history on display like that. And she kept pointing at things and saying, "Your grandmother used to have something like that." And there was a recording of someone doing a traditional chant, and she said, "We have a recording of your grandfather doing that." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, we have a recording of him." And she'd point at pictures and say, "That's what your grandmother looks like." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I know, because we're Cherokee, Mama."
I think she have to kind of suppress who she was growing up?
I don't think she had to. It was more that she just didn't have that connection. My grandparents never facilitated that connection for her.
Got it.
And so whenever she was about my age, she was applying for grad school, and she and my dad were tight on money, and they debated getting a scholarship, because there are scholarships specifically for Native Americans.
Yeah.
They debated applying for one, for her, and she ended up deciding not to, despite having the required amount of blood quantum, which is a whole nother white thing that I don't even want to go into right now.
Yeah.
She decided not to because she felt like she didn't have enough connection to that culture. And that was really kind of heartbreaking for me to hear.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know about that until this summer, whenever we were talking about it. And it was, I think, kind of painful for her to even think about as well, because she was, after experiencing that museum, was kind of disappointed that she had never experienced it before. And I think I don't want to blame my grandparents for not exposing their daughters to it, because it's not their fault. There was a whole lot of, crap going on back then.
Yeah.
But
and
it
survival.
Yes, but it is so sad that they didn't get to be exposed to all that kind of stuff.
Wow. That is